Here we go. All right. And today I have the pleasure of visiting with Andrew Duhon, who's going to be playing at Cosmico. Very excited to see you in about a month on stage at Cosmico in the Redwoods. Andrew, welcome. Thanks for being here with me today.
Yeah, right on. Looking forward to the Redwoods myself.
Yeah. And you've got a nice little couple weeks leading up to it, a celebratory time of season in New Orleans, where you hail from, and then getting out on the road. Tell me what your run looks like leading up to Cosmico.
Yeah, let's see. So next week kicks off Jazz Fest in New Orleans, which is, it's the biggest coming together of all kinds of different music in New Orleans every year. There's several festivals, but Jazz Fest is certainly the biggest. So we'll be playing that one on the second weekend, which is the first weekend in May. But being from New Orleans, everybody's got a gig on each weekend, at least one gig, and then you're playing in between. You can't exhaust the market during Jazz Fest. You get a bunch of gigs, but in the interest of making sure that we don't, I only have one gig per weekend outside of Jazz Fest. We'll play inside of Jazz Fest the second weekend. And then it is time, both because you've played enough in New Orleans, but also it's about to get real hot down here. It's time to get out of town. So that's always been a perfect traffic cone on the calendar for me to start touring somewhere cooler in the summer. And just worked out that Cosmico was happening just about then. And so we decided to head to the West Coast, and we have about a week of gigs between LA and San Francisco. We'll keep it in that world. And, I'll name a few, but I won't get them all. Let's see, Santa Barbara and Venice and Costa Mesa and Bolinas. But yeah, a week of shows that way that'll culminate or finish off at Cosmico.
That's great. It's fun seeing all of these bands that we've gotten to be friends with, building runs around Cosmico, kind of all converging, and then everybody will go off their separate ways. But we've been working on this, getting you out here for a couple of years for Cosmico. You played Healdsburg before on our backyard stage, and you've stayed here in Healdsburg on Mill Creek, and that ended up on a photograph of that visit, ended up on your album cover for Emerald Blue. I was hoping you could just tell me a story about your stay here at Mill Creek and what that was like for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see, beautiful surroundings, of course, but just so happens to coincide with, at the time, I'm finishing recording a record that I'm deciding I'm calling Emerald Blue. This idea, the color of the water in the Pacific Northwest and the color of the eyes of the woman that I followed up there. And in my mind, I'm thinking about or a stream, and maybe standing in the middle of, and I wake up in the morning on Mill Creek and think, well, yeah, I couldn't have set that up any better. So I went and stood in the middle of the icy cold water and had a Polaroid emulsion lift. I found it on Pinterest. I'll be honest, I'm not a photographer. But you can lift a Polaroid, you kind of cut out the border and lift it off the backing and carefully get it into warm water. You get this almost gelatinous image, then you can retransfer onto a piece of paper. I was looking for that process, and in taking the photo in Mill Creek, it was clear that, all right, this is where the photo needs to be. It felt so in nature that it looked unnaturally natureful, if you will. And I think I wanted that. I wanted it to look a little dreamlike and the surrealistic element of a guy standing in the middle of a river. So, accomplished that the best I could, more or less. And yeah, it's a pretty cool memory. And anytime I'm in that space, I'll obviously think about that and that record. That was a pretty cool moment of being on the road, playing shows, and then kind of finding a spot that felt like the right thing for the record.
That's cool. I love how it touched you, and obviously special to me because it's our backyard and Mill Creek running through to our backyard. We were down there last night, and being in nature is such a powerful force. We were watching the right at dusk. It was full of bats, and the bats were feeding on the bugs, just like the fish feed on the bugs. Right over top of the creek. Really, really special place to raise our daughter. Last year at Cosmico, which we did here at the house on the stage, so which you played, Tim Bluhm from the Mother Hips and I were talking, and we started talking about, okay, we're kind of ready to take this to the next level, outgrow our backyard, so to speak. We were talking venues, and he was like, well, basically, like, you've created the Cosmico vibe. This is it here in your backyard. Now you got to find a space that it is your vision, but in an expanded space. And the universe kind of came together. We have a good friend that offered us the use of Dawn Ranch, where we're going to be gathering for Cosmico. And it's really a similar vibe, the beautiful redwood trees, sort of, serene space. And for me, that the importance of that is that being in nature to hear music and to sort of connect with music provides a lot of healing. There's just, the power of music feels like it's enhanced when you're kind of connected to nature. And I feel like a lot of your music, and just your being, you as a person, want to be in nature. You're driven to be in nature. You like to be out, fishing or fly fishing or hiking or in the mountains. Talk to me about your personal kind of connection to nature and how that, kind of inspires your music.
Yeah, I think I remember getting out of college and thinking that I'd spend a year backpacking or something like that, which manifested in booking, like a tourcation, I like to call it, when you have more off days than shows, but going over to the UK with a backpack and a guitar and just riding the rails, playing a few shows. And I wanted that to be an experience of getting to know what was out there, exploration. And similarly to nature, I think it certainly was an exploration of what was out there, but it's the moving through, and the only thing staying constant is yourself. It's like sanding off the surface of yourself to kind of really get to know yourself more than what's out there. It's more about what's in here. And I think nature even more so. It is that walking through nature and exploring, but I think the quietness, it's convening with yourself as much as the outside to me. And when it comes to fly fishing in particular, like that feels like such an intimate way to interact with a very specific part of nature, tiny little insects that float down the river and, just so. And fish are smart enough that if it's not just so, they're not interested. They're not fooled, but it can be, fly fishing, or it can be just walking through some roadside woods somewhere. It feels like when you're in New Orleans, and you're exploring, the French Quarter streets, you get the soul of the place, but in nature, it's like the mother soul or something, it's another kind of soul. And it's good to convene with, especially considering that, most of what we have is sidewalk where I'm from.
I find that really resonates with me, especially in this modern world that we live in, where not just whether we live a city life, but we're also living a technology life. We've got our phone in our pocket and pinging us all the time. And a lot of our life and connection is online, and that's the way we connect with people. That's a good thing because it allows us to stay connected. But sometimes, that idea of convening with yourself, being in nature provides the surroundings where, it's not about taking picture of nature. It's about being still with yourself and you find some truths about yourself and about the world in that. Speaking of truths, one of the interactions we had leading up to Cosmico was we were texting back and forth. I think it was over text, not a phone call, but we were talking about your style and the difference between performance and songwriting, and that you consider yourself a songwriter first and foremost. I don't think performer second most. I think you're a wonderful performer, but at your heart is a songwriter. And one of the things I don't, it's just sort of a bringing something in that is topical for me right now, but Dickie Betts died last night, and we're good friends with Duane, and I think all musicians, they have a way that they touch the audience, and there's an intention to that, and it might be whether it's through your guitar or through your voice, but ultimately you kind of want to break people's hearts open and make them feel something. That's kind of what it's all about. So will you just speak for a minute about when you're writing a song, how you imagine, want it to connect to the audience?
Mm-hmm. I think the simplest way that it's been put to me is a good song has to cost you something. And I think that reflects my theory that, you're talking about the performer or the artist, touching someone or breaking their hearts open, or, and it can be as simple as finding a way to put a finger on your own broken heart, so much so that people see their own scars in yours and the way that they trace the same lines and feel the connection. Can I touch what you're touching almost, because I don't know the listener, but somehow, what is it? It's Thoreau. I think the first thing I read that blew my mind was Thoreau in an essay called Self-Reliance. He said, to believe that what is true for you in your own private heart is true for everyone. That is genius. That was the first hint that backpacking through Europe wasn't a way to see the world. It was a way to see myself, to get to know myself. Of course, get to see the world too, but really the jewel of it is getting to know oneself, and then putting together that there is this human condition that we're all riding the same river, just in different places. So if you can wrap your way around the thought, if you can tell the story in a way that costs you something, in the sense that it's so honest that it can be vulnerable and it can be painful, but say it that way because other people are feeling it that way, and they haven't found their own way to say it. So, I guess that's the beauty of it, is that all of our broken hearts, for instance, are singular, and yet the story is similar enough. The feeling is something that we can all feel. So if you can get there in your own version, tell your own story, and trust that the human condition will plug it in to the rest of us somehow, that's where the soliloquy becomes conversation. That's where you make the connection. That's where you talk to folks after shows and are encouraged because some songs served them in a way that gives it all meaning.
That's really beautiful. I'm feeling chills hearing you describe that, because I think that human connection, that exchange between the artists and the audience, and that energetic kind of uplifting of all of us together is like that is the goal. That's what we're trying to create with Cosmico. It is about helping people, lifting spirits, and telling truths and revealing insights about ourselves. And you're so wonderful at doing that. You have a song that every time I hear it, it connects with me on a very special level, and the storytelling that is wrapped up in this song and revealed through the course of the verses is very powerful. And I was hoping you could just tell a little story about the inspiration or where this came from to you, or what message you're trying to get across with Just Another Beautiful Girl.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I should mention that it's been a number of years, too many years, that as, you know, the band leader with the banter, you know, you have things that you say to introduce songs and give them context. I have said the same thing about this song for too long now, but it just works and it's kind of funny. So I continue to do it. So if you see me play this song at Cosmico, I'm probably going to introduce it this way. I start playing the song and I say, I wrote this song the day a friend of mine's mother asked me why I didn't write more songs about Jesus. True story. I don't know what I told her. I think I passed out, but, you know, I went home and I wrote a love story. That's the, you know, succinct band stage version. But what went down was I went to pick up a friend for lunch, a friend from college. She and I hadn't seen each other for years, and we were both in town for the summer, I think. So going to get some lunch with a friend. She's getting ready. Her mom's in the front room. So I, you know, sit down on the question couch while she's getting ready, and her mother lays down in the Bark and Lounger's throne, you know. And I think it was the first question. Maybe she said, how you doing? I think their first thing, she says, so Andrew, why don't you write more songs about Jesus? I truly don't remember what I told her, but I think the feeling that led me to tell the story that is Just Another Beautiful Girl is something like, you know, I went to a Catholic high school and, you know, I was in right about until my favorite Bible quote was replaced by the quote, beware the man of one book. I read more. I took a Religions of the World course in my freshman year. That was useful to say, wait a minute. And yet that could be so unifying. Oh, we all have these customs and rituals, and for a large part, they can be useful for us to develop ritual and community. But there was something about going back home, and as I am trying to figure out how to tell my story as a songwriter, the answer or the question from back home was, why don't you tell more stories about the story we told you? And interestingly, like a little tangentially, but maybe my retort in the song is, why aren't we a community in this suburban white place, you know, with another neighborhood with people who don't look like us? And why don't we associate more? Why don't we even talk about that? Luckily, I think since then we have started talking about that. But at the time, that little piece made its way into the story of that song for sure. And, you know, to me, I mean, that was just throwing darts against the board. And sometimes you're aiming for a 20 and you hit the bullseye. I don't know. but yeah, I mean, that remains a song that I play at every set, I think.
Well, it's a beautiful song, and I guess we'll look forward to hearing it at Cosmico. Sounds like you'll probably work it in. I'm going to work us towards wrapping up here. I got a fun story that I'd like to hear just a little context around for people who are not from New Orleans or maybe haven't been to New Orleans. I think it's one of your songs that is just like uplifting fun, and if you're from New Orleans, there's a little wink and a nod to it. Will you tell us a little bit about what the Castle on Irish Bayou is?
Right. So I have to give the bass player Miles Weeks credit. Miles has like sense about what's cool or what feels right, you know, with respect to, well, I'll paint you the picture. So there we are in the van. We're heading to Mobile, I-10 East. Miles is in the passenger seat. He looks out the window and sees what is the most interesting house on I-10 East. It is a castle that someone built, allegedly for the World's Fair in 84, I think it was, in New Orleans. They had also built a pyramid back in the day, but the pyramid no longer stands. Still to this day, there is a 1-bedroom castle. If you've never seen it, you're picturing it too big. It is a 1-turret castle, which makes it even more charming. And it's on the bayou, out of place. There's just, double wides on stilts around it. And there's this castle. Miles looks at it and says, somebody should write a song about that place. And I looked at him and he looked at me and he just said, you can have it. So, I wrote the song. And in the song, I am speaking to my partner and with respect to the rising real estate prices. I've been looking outside of New Orleans. Say, what about the castle on Irish Bayou? Mr. Real Estate Man, tell me what kind of check I got to write you, right? So it's clever. It's not true. I don't want to buy the castle, but sometimes songs can be clever and not true. But since then, I've gotten my just dessert in that the castle has since gone up for sale, and everybody wants to let me know about it because obviously I want to buy the castle.
I bet they do. It's a funny spot that it. Funny because it's true. And if anybody watching this wants to get a kick out of it, go look up on YouTube Andrew's video for the castle in Irish Bayou. It's also a great video. All right. So I've got a little thing I want to do, just kind of wrap up here. I was listening to our local radio station out here in Healdsburg last night, The Crush, and they do a local music calendar. And this time of year, and knowing that I was talking to you this morning, it always takes me back to WWOZ and listening to the music calendar on that and the voice. It's so iconic. So let's see if we can do a little outro here. I'll say it first, and then you can repeat after me. Thanks for being with me here, Andrew Duhon, today. Now get out there and go see some live local music.
All right. I think I got the first part. I definitely got the second part.
All right. Let's hear it.
All right. This has been Andrew Duhon. Thanks for listening to us today. Now go out there, support and enjoy some live local music.
That nailed it. That was great. All right, man.